Welcome back to Living with a Classic, and as you may know if you follow the channel, I daily drive a 1975 XJ6, so it gets driven year-round in all weather. It's winter here at the moment. Snow, rain, everything, it gets used. However, I have other cars on the channel as well, and some of them are really just fair weather cars. They only come out when it's, nice weather, a certain nice occasion, during the summer. Try to avoid rain if I can. Just a car that I just want to use on nice days. And I think many people have classic cars, really only use them on nice days. I think it's more rare for people to actually use them daily as I do with one of mine. But I've chosen to do it with one of them because, like I say, sometimes I have the other garage queens and I have one that I use a lot and enjoy. Doesn't mean I don't enjoy the other cars, it's just a different way of enjoying them. But back to today's topic. So this can be, I'm not saying it's controversial, but people have a lot of opinions on this. This is just my opinion, and you're welcome to have yours, of course. Let me know in the comments down below if you do something completely different. But when, at least where I live here in the Northern Hemisphere, during the winter, most of us store our classic cars somewhere. Then we take them out in spring and start enjoying them again. If you're lucky to be able to store them at home like I do, you're able to check on them every now and then and make sure they're all right. I have different ways of storing them. So the cars that get stored here in the workshop is really just one car that usually gets stored in here. That's the XJS, that's all the way in the corner over there. We can have a look at that a little bit later. I store that one differently than the cars I store over in the main storage area. That's just because it's really different environments. In here it's heated and it's dehumidified, so I can store the car. It just has a blanket covering over it. We'll have a look at the side, like a soft cover. Windows down a little bit. And that's perfect. And it's all the way into the workshop, so I don't usually periodically start that thing up just because it would really just smoke up the workshop with a lot of exhaust. However, if it's a nice day and I can move the other things out, I'll of course take it out and then take it for a small little drive to warm all the fluids through. And that is really the best thing that you can do if it's a nice dry day and nice weather outside. Even if it's in the middle of winter, as long as, if you're afraid of salt and there's salt in your area, make sure it's rained a bit and it's nice and dry and the salt is away. There's no harm taking the car out for a little spin just to make sure that, brakes and everything work fine. However, that's not really what we're covering today. We're covering just warming up the engine. I think it's a good idea to do it. I think that certain engines don't like to sit for, 6 months and then just crank it over and want to use it again. I think that leads to a lot of leaks. A lot of gaskets drying up, a lot of hoses, everything. There's also modern gas to think about. Modern gas goes bad pretty quickly with ethanol. So if you start up the car regularly, you're always pumping gas through it. You can keep filling the tank, because I think it's a good idea to keep the tanks pretty full just to try not get that much moisture in there. So you can run it, up to operating temperature. If you're not able to take it outside, like today, we have a bunch of snow outside, so I'm not going to take the car outside. However, we're going to start it up, let it run up to complete operating temperature, let it be really nice and hot, and then shut it off, disconnect the battery, do all that again. So I thought we'd go over there and have a look at the XJ12 in a little bit. But before that, let's just have a quick look at the XJS here, and I'll show you the other way I like to store cars for the winter. Over in this corner of the workshop is the XJS. As you can see, it's under a cover. Just lift it off a tiny bit just to show it, but there it is under the cover. It's sitting here, and since I say this workshop is heated and dehumidified, I leave the windows like this, just open a little bit, and the air will circulate through this. And that will just make sure that you don't get any mold or anything in the car, in the interior. So that's really the one thing you want to avoid. Of course, you don't want to get rust as well, but most cars are rust proof, so even if it's a little moist where you're storing them, if it's not for years, that shouldn't be an issue. But one issue, of course, is getting mold in the interior, which is a really nasty thing that you don't want to get in there. So that's also why, I have a dehumidifier which circulates all the air in here, and that is heated as well, so not had any issues with that at all. It smells nice in the interior, you don't get any mold or anything at all. If you ever do get mold in the interior, usually the first place you see it is on the steering wheel, because you have the grease from your hands on the steering wheel, and that, I guess there's some kind of food or something for the mold, and that's where you really see it first. So now we'll walk on over to the other unit, which is more of a storage unit, and have a look at the XJ12, and we'll start it up as well. Here is my 1977 XJ12. If you're new to my channel, I'll put a link, I'll try to remember to put a link to a playlist up above where you can check out the previous videos on this car. One of the last videos was I was actually just going to get ready to get it inspected in early fall, and as soon as I put some fuel in the right tank, I noticed I had a leak from one of the fuel lines, so that's why you got the rear bumper off and all that. I purchased all the new fuel lines for that side, but then winter came and other things came up. But as soon as the weather gets a little bit better, I'm gonna tackle that, remove the cover on the other side as well, replace all the fuel lines and get to that. But the fuel lines on the left side are fine at the moment, so I'm gonna run it on the left tank. That is one thing. I have sort of ignored my usual rule of keeping tanks full just because I will be draining the tanks anyways. So I've kept them pretty empty, but with some fuel stabilizer that takes away moisture. So just put in a little bit more fresh gas in the left tank here. Don't think there's much in it, but there should be enough to run it up to operating temperature. Other than that, this is in a very different building. I do have plans for this building in the future. I would like to actually finish it. Previous owner of the farm started building it and, well, didn't get to finish it. So half of it has a pretty good concrete floor. I want to pour a new floor all throughout the building, finish up the walls, put in a inner ceiling and everything, and put in isolation and be able to put in a heat pump or air pump in here to be able to heat this place and make it, not going to make it a workshop, I think, but just make it a nice garage. And I may put a lift in here, or, you know, be able to lift up cars. That is a dream of mine, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. But, you know, time and money. But for now, I use it to store cars, and it works pretty well. But I use a different technique here. As you see, the windows are up on the car. That is because here I can't really dehumidify the whole place. So it can sometimes get a tiny bit humid here. Usually doesn't get bad. The only time it really gets a little bit humid in here is if we get a lot of snow and that lays up on the roof and you get sun on that and it melts. Then we get some humidity in here, but then I open up the doors and, you know, all that goes out, so that's no issue really at all. But what I do here, which is different, is you can see here on the floor, I have one of these, this one is particularly a Swedish brand, but it basically absorbs moisture and collects it in there. And then I have an initial tray around it so you don't spill it. And that works really well of making interior and like not feel moldy or anything. It just, it helps. I've used it all as long as I've had these cars, and it's always made the interior smell nice and fresh, even if the car's been sitting for a year. You just have to check it periodically because it does fill up with water. So the only thing I've done is I've hooked up a battery. I am actually going to replace the battery in this car because I'm getting a new one that will fit in the battery box. That would be something, you know, in the spring as well. So this one is not the greatest, but I had it on charge, so hopefully it should be fine. We'll go out on the other side, just check the oil, check the coolant level, and then we'll see if this thing actually cranks into life. I did change the oil and gave this car a service right before I put it in here because I had plans on actually using it. So, I mean, it should be, yeah, that's extremely clean and up to the max. So, I mean, it's run maybe 15 minutes on this new oil, or 20 minutes or so. Or, yeah, a little bit more than that. I went for a drive. See if I can get this off one-handed. Just want to see if there's... I'm not going to be able to see that on camera, but I can see that there is coolant in there. I'll put that back on. Then we're going to grab the key, if I can find that somewhere. Cycle the ignition a few times. That primes the fuel system. So you can see it's fuel injected. This can make sure there are no fuel leaks. Basically just do a sniff test. So it's a little bit tight on the side to get into the car with the camera and everything. So I'm gonna go around to the other side to do the priming, I think. All right. Okay, we got some lights, and I heard the fuel pump. You can kind of hear the little whistle sound there. Here, that is actually the fuel pressure regulator is opening up, sending fuel back to the tank. So that means that everything is pressurized. I'm gonna go out there and just smell that nothing smells like fuel, and then we'll try and start it up. Okay, we got no fuel smell, so let's see if we can start this thing up. I'm gonna prime it a couple times. Yeah, I do have some issue with the oil warning light there. The cable's a little bit loose out there. I think to replace that connector. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Like there you see. All right, let's try and crank it over. And oil pressure is coming up. And yeah, the tach is not working. I believe it recently happened. I believe it actually is the voltage, or what's it called, the ballast resistor, which sends out the tach signal on this car. I think that is what's not working, so I'm gonna get a spare one, try that out, because I've tried everything else. Everything else seems to be working. The tach seems to be working as well. But yeah, it's coming into life. Oil pressure is coming up. This old V12 has really good oil pressure, but if you know anything about these cars, you know that the gauges are very, very, very slow to react. But it's starting to come up here now. And yes, I'm just gonna go out to the engine, check for leaks, check how everything's running, and then we're just gonna let it warm up. It is very smooth, running on all cylinders, and I don't smell or see any fuel anywhere. I'll check on the ground a bit to make sure I don't see any coolant, but this thing usually doesn't leak anything. It's in pretty good shape. It is a really low mileage one actually for being 1977, and it does run beautifully. So that is actually one of the reasons that he started this one up, because these cars are famous for one thing, these injectors. As some of you guys might have seen if you follow here in Tyrrell's channel, Tyrrell's Classic Workshop, we had a Bond and Fireworks version of this car. Been sitting for a while, and it wasn't running in all cylinders. I believe it was 2 or 3 injectors that were stuck. And that is why I started this thing up every now and then, because the injectors can easily get stuck on these engines if they're not running a lot. They sit for a long time, they get gummed up, especially with new fuel. That is another good reason to actually let it warm up. But don't just start it and, turn it off right away, because let it actually warm up a little bit. Let the oil get a little bit warm. And if you're not able to drive it out like I'm not at the moment, at least let it get up to temperature. But I'm just gonna rev it a tiny bit so you can hear. While it's running, I'm also going to turn on the lights, just make sure that everything works, all the switches, everything works. Turn that off. This is an AC car as well, so I'm actually going to turn on the AC just so that the refrigerant in the system goes around a bit and circulates. And let's see if that will click on. Not yet, but should probably in a little bit. Got working taillights as well, and most of the moisture is starting to get out of the exhaust now as well, which is a good thing. Because also, like, if you let everything completely warm up, any moisture accumulate anywhere, it's all going to go out of there. And at least in my opinion, I think that is a much better solution than having the car just sit for 6 or maybe 7 months and not ever start up. I mean, now we got the fuel pressure, the fuel pump pumping over. We got everything else, working. We got oil going over system. All right, you heard that click. That was the AC compressor coming on. So it took a while for everything to work. So now that's good as well. That's circulating through, making sure that all the O-rings stay lubricated. All of that is working. It actually does say in the manual for these cars that even during winter time, you should set it to maximum full sun time, just to make sure that the AC system goes through and lubricates. And also, it is electric climate control on these, so there's a bunch of servos and gizmos on the other side under the dash. So I like to go through all the settings, make sure that everything works. Because it's a lot easier to deal with, to enjoy these cars if things actually work. And the easiest way to let things work is to actually use them. see here, it's going up to temperature. Yeah, fuel is very low, but I am aware that that is the case. But I'm emptying the tank as soon as I can get this thing up into the workshop. It's almost up to operating temperature. Oil pressure is still amazing. Oh, yeah, I don't know, that compressor gives me a scare every single time it clicks on. And alternator's doing a good job as well. So far everything is going well, and we got some cool air going through here, so we'll set this to some heat instead over here. Get some nice hot air going into the car. So I'm gonna let this run for another 15 minutes or so. I'm also gonna, hold it up a little bit at different revs, so it warm up a little bit faster. Yeah, that's about it. I will let this thing run a little bit longer, and then we'll head on back up into the workshop. So I ran it for a little bit longer, so everything was nice and warm. Of course, it would be a lot better if I was able to take it for a drive. But first of all, this car isn't on the road at the moment. Also, we have real winter here and a lot of snow, and I only have summer tires on it. It's really not safe to go out on the road. But if it is a milder winter, which we have sometimes, I mean, it's pretty much every other winter we have a lot of snow, and every other we don't. Then it is, nice and mild outside. Then I can take it out and use it on nice, dry, sunny days. Go for a nice drive, make sure everything, warms up and brakes and everything, loosens up and works. And that is really the best thing you can do. But in my opinion, if you're not able to take it out on the road due to, a reason that maybe it's not legal to take it out on the road, maybe you're not allowed to for your insurance, or, or maybe it's just, really harsh winter climate, I think it's better to let it actually run for a bit, completely up to operating temperature. I don't mean just 5 minutes. I mean, 15, 20 minutes at least, at various RPM, just make sure everything is nice and warm, the thermostats are open. Oil is probably not going to go up to full operating temperature on such a large engine, but just, have everything get fully warmed up a little bit, not just a little bit for, a couple minutes, make sure it starts up, just make sure it gets really full up and warm. And in my opinion, that is better than letting it sit, because things, injectors won't stick. Turn on all the lights, make sure everything works just like it did here. At least in my opinion, I think that just makes everything continue working, because otherwise you're met by, spring where you maybe turn on the ignition. If you have carbs, fuel pump starts filling them up, and they're just leaking everywhere because everything is dried up, or they're all gummed up because the fuel has evaporated and left a weird residue behind. I think it's better just, keep everything sort of working, and it should be more reliable. But please let me know what your opinion is down below. What do you do with your classics during the winter? I would love to hear that in the comments down below. Anyways, I'd like to take this time to thank all of the supporters over on Patreon for their continued support on this channel. Thanks to their support, I'm able to make these videos and hopefully make them better and better. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel. It really does help out a lot. And until next time, I'm Adam, and this was Living with a Classic. I'll see you soon.